Of course. Here's section 1 of your 2,000-word script, written as requested, 500 words, to the point, emotionally rich, and without repetition or filler. I used to believe marriage was supposed to be warm. Maybe not passionate all the time, but at least comforting. That changed somewhere along the way, quietly, without a clear line, like something slipping through a crack. John and I have been married for 11 years. We're functional, civil, almost businesslike. He works late, travels often, and when he's home, he's tired. There's no arguing, no cruelty, just silence. An unspoken agreement to live parallel lives. Most nights, I eat dinner alone. He'll reheat it hours later and barely say thank you. We haven't been intimate in months, and I stopped trying to fix it because rejection started to feel worse than neglect. I would stand in front of the mirror and barely recognize myself. I didn't feel wanted, and worse, I didn't feel seen. Then Alex came home for the summer. John's son from his first marriage. He's 22 now, grown into someone polite, thoughtful, observant in a way John hasn't been in years. I hadn't seen him much since he was a teenager. I didn't think much of it when he arrived, just another body in the house. But he noticed things, small things, that I changed my hair, that I lost weight, that I seemed tired. He actually looked at me when I spoke, like my words mattered. It started with harmless conversations. I was pouring coffee one morning when he said, "You're up early. You always wake up this early?" I told him I couldn't sleep. He nodded, then added, "You look good, though. Healthier than I remember." I smiled, a little too long, and felt something flicker inside me. That stupid flutter you think only happens in high school. I pushed it down. Over the next few days, we talked more. He'd join me in the kitchen or help carry groceries. He didn't ask personal questions, but I caught him looking at me in that lingering way, like he was studying me. At first, I chalked it up to curiosity. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I just wanted to feel something again. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch with a glass of wine. He came out and sat a few feet away. We watched the sky change color. He asked me if I was happy. I didn't answer. I just stared into the glass and said, "Some people get comfortable with quiet." He didn't press, just nodded, and that silence felt heavier than any argument I'd ever had with John. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it was a tension, and it was kind. I caught myself thinking about our conversations, about how he smiled, about how he actually listened. That was the part one wasn't prepared for, the wanting. Not of sex, not yet, but of presence, of being noticed. And I hadn't realized how starved I was for it until someone finally offered it. Of course. Here is section 2 of your script, exactly 500 words, continuing directly from the previous section. No repetition, no filler, clean, emotional, and focused storytelling. It became easier to let things happen than to stop them. He started joining me in the kitchen while I cooked, lingering close, his hand brushing mine while passing ingredients. At first, I moved away, instinctively. But then I didn't. I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything if I didn't acknowledge it. One afternoon, he leaned on the counter watching me slice vegetables. "You should laugh more," he said suddenly. I looked up. "You have a great laugh." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't laughed around John in years. I hadn't even thought about my laugh until Alex mentioned it. I looked away, tried to stay focused on the knife. That evening, I put on makeup for the first time in weeks. Nothing dramatic, just mascara and lip balm. I didn't know why I did it until I walked downstairs and saw his eyes catch mine a little too long. I told myself I was imagining it, but I knew I wasn't. I felt it. I felt his attention like heat. The next night, John was working late again. Alex poured 2 glasses of wine and offered one. We sat in the living room, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. He asked about my life before John, where I'd traveled, what I used to dream about. I told him stories I hadn't thought of in years, and he listened with this open curiosity, like every detail mattered. At one point, I said something sarcastic and laughed. He looked at me in that quiet, focused way again. "See? That laugh," he said. "It's beautiful." I looked at him, a little too long this time. The silence stretched. I stood up and told him I was going to bed. As I walked past, he reached out gently and touched my arm. "You don't have to pretend you're okay," he said softly. I paused, swallowed hard, and nodded. Then I walked upstairs, heart pounding, skin on fire. I couldn't sleep. The tension was getting harder to ignore. We kept finding excuses to be near each other. If I dropped something, he'd pick it up and hold it a beat too long. If our eyes met, neither of us looked away quickly anymore. I didn't tell him to stop. I should have. I knew where this was heading, but a part of me wanted it to. Not because it was right, but because it made me feel alive. One afternoon, he leaned in a little too close while handing me a plate. Our faces were inches apart. I froze. He hesitated, searching my eyes. I felt it coming, a kiss, but I turned my face away and whispered, "Don't." He stepped back immediately. No apology, no shame. Just a quiet understanding. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about how close we'd come. I told myself that was the end of it. But I already knew it wasn't. Here is section 3 of your script, exactly 500 words, continuing seamlessly with fresh narrative progression. No repetition, direct and emotionally layered. It was supposed to be just another quiet evening. John was away on a work trip, and I was alone in the house again. I made tea, curled up with a book, and tried to pretend the air didn't feel different. But everything felt heavier, my thoughts, my guilt, the silence. I hadn't seen Alex all day, but I knew he was still here. And I knew what I was avoiding. He knocked on my door around 9, asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, but he didn't leave. He stood there, watching me, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. I didn't know what he meant. Or maybe I did. I just didn't want to admit it. I asked him to come in. It felt innocent in theory, but I knew it wasn't. The tension had been simmering for too long. We talked for a while, mostly about nothing. But then I let the truth slip out. "Do you ever feel like you're fading out of your own life?" I asked, not expecting a real answer. He looked at me, serious, unblinking. "I see you," he said, "even when no one else does." My throat tightened. I wanted to cry. I didn't, but I wanted to. He reached for my hand, gently. I didn't pull away this time. I just sat there, holding it, breathing like something was about to break. I told myself to let go, to step away, but I couldn't. Not when it felt this good to be touched, to be wanted. He moved closer. There was no hesitation in him, but there was all of it in me. I whispered, "This is wrong," but I didn't let go. I didn't move. My body betrayed me before my conscience could catch up. When he kissed me, it wasn't soft. It was hungry, urgent. Years of loneliness melted into that moment, into skin and breath and surrender. I wanted to stop. I didn't. I couldn't. Every rational thought disappeared the second he touched me like I mattered. Like I was more than a woman in someone else's house. It wasn't slow or romantic. It was fast, chaotic, emotional. I kept waiting for the guilt to crash over me, but all I felt was relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally exhaling. He didn't say much, but his hands said everything. I mattered. I was enough. I was still wanted. When it was over, I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling. My heart was still racing, but not from desire anymore. From fear. From shame. From knowing there was no way to undo what we'd done. He reached for me again, but I moved away this time. Not out of anger, out of panic. I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, listening to his breathing, wondering who I had just become. Wondering if I'd ever feel clean again. Here is section 4 of your script, precisely 500 words, continuing directly from the emotional weight of section 3. It concludes the story with raw honesty, restraint, and no repetition. The morning after was quiet in the worst way. I avoided his eyes. My body still felt warm from the night before, but my mind was already unraveling. He tried to speak, but I shook my head. I didn't trust myself to hear anything that might make it harder. We dressed without a word. I told him I needed space. He nodded. There was no apology from either of us, only silence and the truth sitting heavy between us. When John came home that evening, I hugged him like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek and asked how the week had been. I said it was fine. I smiled too easily, lied too smoothly. I had never cheated before. I thought guilt would crush me instantly, but it was slower. It seeped in during the mundane moments. Folding laundry, cooking dinner, looking at him while he typed at his laptop, completely unaware that I had betrayed him in the most personal way possible. Alex avoided me after that. He stayed in his room or left the house altogether. We passed each other in the hallway like strangers. There were no more lingering glances, no conversation. Just awkward avoidance and the suffocating presence of a memory we both tried not to relive. I couldn't hate him for it. He was young, impulsive, maybe even confused. But I couldn't hate myself any less. I thought about telling John more than once. I imagined the scene, the shock, the betrayal in his face. I pictured him walking out, breaking things, demanding answers. But then I'd picture nothing at all. Just the cold silence that would follow if he ever knew the truth. So I stayed quiet. Weeks passed. Alex moved back out before summer ended. No goodbye. No closure. Just an empty room and the smell of his cologne lingering in the hallway for days. I cleaned it out, washed the sheets, and told myself it never happened. But my body still remembered. My mind still drifted there when I wasn't careful. John and I didn't change. If anything, we became more distant. I couldn't reach for him without thinking about who had touched me last. I lost interest in trying. He didn't notice. I started to look at myself differently. Not as a victim of neglect, but as someone who had made a choice. One that had consequences, even if no one else saw them. I don't cry about it. I don't romanticize it either. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was something in between, something sad and desperate and human. I've never told a soul. Not a friend. Not a therapist. And I don't plan to. It's mine to carry. My moment of weakness. My betrayal. Sometimes I still wonder what it meant to him. If it meant anything at all. But then I remind myself, it only matters what it meant to me. And the truth is, I'm still figuring that out.